The film Last of Mohicans, directed by Michael Mann, is centered around the white protagonist, Hawkeye, who is supposed to be adopted by the Indian clan Mohicans of the Eastern Nation. The film is supposed to be placed in the 1700s during the French and Indian War. The historical analysis makes sense in the history due to the fact that many Creoles married Indians for political reasons through tribal governance. A review that I found on YouTube, the story clarified exams, quote, while the use of native guides and news from the natives may seem like a trope, this was very in line with the colonial experience. In the 1500s and 1700s, settlers needed natives to inform colonists events taking place between tribes. So throughout the film, we see a lot of natives helping the French, helping the settlers, especially when the daughters of the colonel gets kidnapped, and Hawkeye and his members need to go and retrieve them. So that's the whole premise of the story. Mogwai and Huron's tale of revenge against the colonel is a big part of the plot and requires the British to trust him. The film showcases Native Americans as they have a sense of agency and that they had their own agenda with military strategy to leverage beneficial alliances with the Europeans. The family realities in the borderlands are different than the North America. Our pursuit of their goals and revenge is what we see throughout the film, and we see that especially with Mogwai, when he talks about the colonists sharing his experience with them. Quote, Marva's children were killed by the English, and his heart wouldn't be whole again the day the gray hair and all his seed are dead, end quote. It's contextualized in history, the patterns of Mogwai Mohawk fight with the British for trade and safety. Indians seem very vengeful in this film, which leads to savage ways, like kidnapping the colonel's daughters, while preserving a stoic demeanor throughout the film when they give their reasonings to everything that they're doing, and a very wisdom-based reasoning to why they are doing all this. In an interview with Robbie Wiggin, Wes Studi shares that he wants the American Indian audience to know in Last of Mohicans that the northeastern nations help shape the history today. Ultimately times, Indians are victims of Europeans, and so this film centers in the creation of a nation based on turmoil. In preparation for the movie, he did shave his head for the film to look more Huron, to be perceived as authentic. He wanted people to know that the different set of people that he was portraying discovers a more darker human nature. In Wind Talkers, the historical film directed by John Woo in 2002 tells a story about Navajo's involvement in World War II. Navajos created their code from their own language. These were the code talkers. The general tells Sergeant he cannot let the Navajos succumb to enemies to save the secret code. He must kill them to protect the code and win the war against the Japanese. The white soldiers seem to be racist towards the natives. Main Indian Ben Yazi and White Horse are referred to as Injun Poker and Howe with their first greetings. Indians believe they were fighting for their land, their country, that they have just as much right to be in this war. Ben is instructed to use his code in the battlefield and is able to send coordinates to Navy so they can take out the enemies. They were successfully giving the right messages to eliminate the enemies so the U.S. Marines could complete the mission on Sapan. The title of the film's origin is considered to be of native language. In the battle scene of Sapan, a Navajo soldier instructs, quote, new password, challenge, quote, wind, and quote, answer, quote, talkers. That's what one of our Navajo brothers calls us, end quote. This fictitious name does not do code talkers justice because they were more valuable in the war than just following the white soldiers around with their codes as burdens, how the film portrays, but they did not have to follow. They did have to follow through with combat. Keith Little, a former code talker, has said, quote, you have to survive in combat. If you have to crawl behind a dead person for cover, that was it, end quote. In other words, Navajo soldiers, whether code talkers or not, didn't spend a lot of time staring, wincing, looking away, or hiding, end quote. The film centers around Joe Enders being the American hero, dealing with his PTSD, completing each mission with more shock value and bloody scenes, while having to practically babysit the code talkers. After the battle, White Horse and Yazi have a praying ritual. A protection ceremony is given. Navajos believe that until a body is given a proper burial, the spirits don't leave the body till they pass. Again, another portrayal of Indians being mystical is an easy target. Ghosts are seen as gentle spirits passing to the spirit world. The white soldiers watching curiosity. In Western culture, we see ghosts as a spooky thing, so this is a contrast in beliefs. Ben is assaulted in a river on a platoon for looking Japanese, so Chip refers to him as Injun, where Ben responds with, quote, I am Navajo, of the bitter water people, born of towering Howe's clan. This film does not paint a pretty picture of natives as Hollywood completely subjects them as weak and bronze in order to show an American hero winning the war with a martyr. But it gives little appreciation to the active Navajo members being brave in a war they did not believe in. The Sum 200 Oglala, Lakota, and American Indian movement activists had seized the few major buildings in town of Pine Ridge Indian Reservation of South Dakota for 71 days. They were demanding grievances and federal aid needed for the reservations, as Indian life on the reservations were not great. With heavily armed federal troops blocking the occupation, was supplied with guns and rationed food for the cold, hungry Indians, and eventually would invite popular news media to cover the story and talk about the massacre of Indians about half a century ago. The catalyst of this event was the murder of an Indian man that struck political and economic forces. Though the federal government failed to make good on any of the promises that ended the siege, the event succeeded in bringing the desperate conditions of Indian reservations to life to the nation's attention. The 2009 documentary We Shall Remain, episode Wind and Me, directed by Chris Eyre, Rick Burns, and Stanley Nelson Jr., which is narrated by Benjamin Pratt, narrates the tremendous story of the events taking place on Wounded Knee, South Dakota, with any movement taking siege of the reservation. The documentary takes in the accounts from several witnesses and participants, such as Carter Camp, Dodona Hawk, Russell Means, Jim Labadie, and Dennis Banks. Its accounts and interviews of activist members intend to tell a story of the resilience of the tribe in giving to change reform and the reservation leadership, welfare and health care, and long-standing problem of being seen as a sovereign nation, that their invisibility would come to a cease with the divisive force of retaliating U.S. Marshals with militant tactics. They document government negotiators, meetings, and CPs with chiefs and Indian Affairs administrators, doing as much research about the first Wounded Knee incident in hundreds and Lakota history throughout the history. The writers of the documentary managed to not only break stigmas of natives being victimized, but establish the utmost respect of the Lakota sovereignty, with the realities of Indian life in modern day struggling to be seen. In 1998, the film Smoke Signals, directed by Chris Eyre, epitomizes Golden Age cinema for Aboriginal films. Evan Adams' embodiment of his grandmother with Indian humor and goodness, and the film gives great appreciation what it means to be native through comedy. John Trudeau in Real Injun reviews this as this was a movie made by a native guy and not about what occurred 120 years ago. The movie, narrated by Thomas Builds the Fire, who goes on a journey outside the reservation to pick up the remains of Victor's father. They both, on the way, learn life lessons about what it means to be native and struggles with the realities of how their upbringing affect their adulthood today. This coming-of-age movie highlights key problems the native community face, like alcoholism and being a man, as both had little to no father figures. So along the way, they give each other advice and build each other up with the great tradition of oral traditions of storytelling.
Every night, we mourn. To misery are born. To misery are born.